So for those that don't know, Nina Turner was the front runner to replace Marcia Fudge's seat in Ohio. Marcia Fudge is now the Secretary of HUD. I know she has so much work cleaning up Ben Carson's mess, and she lost to Shontel Brown, and she lost by some pretty intense numbers that more or less some folks maybe didn't see coming. Brown defeated Turner with 51% to 44% in a district where the Democratic nominee is normally always the winner. I want to play a brief clip of Nina Turner's concession speech. Listen to this.
We're not gonna stop. See, there's a debt that has to be paid. And Sister Turner not playing. I am going to work hard to ensure that something like this never happens to a progressive candidate or leader. See, we can lose this race. Evil money manipulating and aligned in this election. And I don't want you to relent because it took evil money. It took evil money to come in here and do this. But I swear to you that as sure as there is a God in heaven, Sister Turner gonna continue working with every fiber of her being until true justice reigns.
Evil money. That sounds like a new series on investigative discovery. I want to say this, then I want you to sound off, Dr. Johnson. So, two things. I know some folks have some passionate thoughts about Nina Turner.
No.
But I do feel like she cares. I do feel like at the end of the day, she does care about policies that will help Black folks, that will help poor folks. I really don't think Nina Turner is some kind of opportunist. I believe that she cares. The other thing, and Jason, I was texting this to you, I'm hearing a lot of people say, oh, this is an example of the progressives losing. This is an example of the progressives, falling apart. But the truth of the matter is, Shontel Brown is a progressive. She's not an Eric Adams. For those that don't know, the mayor of New York, we're assuming he's going to be as far as got the Democratic nomination. But Shontel Brown is not an Eric Adams. She's not, a Kristen Sinema. She's not a Joe. Shontel Brown is a progressive. And although she said she wasn't for defund the police, if you watch her interview with Tiffany Cross, although she wouldn't say that term, everything she said was the exact platform of defund the police. So this is not a loss for progressives. Shontel Brown is a progressive. But that said, Jason Johnson, your thoughts?
Clay, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this, backing up what you just said. Ideologically, I probably line up closer to Nina Turner than I do with Shontel Brown.
Absolutely.
Ideologically. Yeah. But that's not how elections are won. And no one wants to say this because it's not popular and because people live online. But Nina Turner blew this race. Period. She should have won this going away months ago. She had 100% name recognition. She doubled Shontel Brown's fundraising. She had volunteers coming from all over the country. She had celebrity guests. She had AOC. She had more members of Congress endorsing her. She had Bernie Sanders, Cornel West, Danny Glover, Mark Ruffalo, John Cusack, Cynthia Nixon. All of these
Mark
people.
Ruffalo went down there?
Mark
Ruffalo went to Cleveland?
He donated.
I didn't know that. Okay, Mark.
She had all these things going for her and lost. Now, here's the thing to remember. And this is what's going to come out in my piece in the Grill. That's going to come out later on this afternoon. Nina Turner was the establishment in this situation. You can't get more establishment than being the person who was a national campaign surrogate, who ran a lobbying firm, who's been a former politician, who can raise hundreds of thousands of dollars with one tweet. She was the establishment, and she got beat by a local candidate who most people couldn't have picked up out of a lineup in April. Now, why does that happen? It happens because, one, Turner nationalized the race. And once she started bringing in national attention, it gave an excuse for DFMI and Clyburn and other people to come in and support Brown. But the second thing, and I know this because I lived in Cleveland, I still have friends there in Cleveland. A lot of outside analysts underestimated what Turner's reputation in the city was prior to this race. She had burned a lot of bridges even before she got back there. And I had a lot of people simply telling me they didn't even know she lived in the district anymore. So I don't want anybody out there dunking on progressives because I don't think this is indicative of the progressive movement being dead. I don't want anybody out there screaming and saying the moderates are terrible, because that's not how anybody in Cleveland looked at it. They were looking at two different candidates, one who was this big famous person who came in a caravan and was like, hey, I'm still local, I'm still Lee in Harvard, and people are like, huh, I haven't seen you, versus a local person who got some outside help because she had been there all along doing the work.
Amisha, you posted a tweet that went viral. It blew up about Nina Turner's concession speech. You said, at what point did candidates lose the ability to accept their loss, go back and regroup, analyze where they went wrong, and commit to helping the community district regardless of position held? Nina Turner basically issued a vengeance warning in her concession speech. Explain more of that.
Well, I think that to what Dr. Johnson just said, at the end of the day, we saw someone who had all of the things in alignment to actually win this race and win it big, not only in terms of fundraising, but endorsements. And it took a nasty turn towards the end. But I think that last night, Nina Turner showed exactly the type of candidate you don't ever want to be. Her concession speech sounded a lot, one, like not a concession at all, but also of a very vengeful rhetoric. She brought in, talks about evil and evil money and dark money. She brought in this rhetoric about basically, you're not going to hear the last of us, or we're going to come and get you. It was very dark. And that's not how we respond to elections being lost. That's not how we respond to the people who actually, put in blood, sweat, and tears on her campaign. She can't forget that just in June, she was leading by double digits. So at the end of the day, I think that, this is a slap in the face, not only to those who supported her, but also those who fundraised for her and those who were really waving the banner of Nina Turner this whole time. But beyond that, this shows us something else, that the whole Trump rhetoric of not wanting to accept the loss and of taking people down and basically blowing the party up in the same process isn't something that's just a Republican ideology. It is seeped into the Democratic Party as well. I get it, losses hurt, but we cannot have this type of rhetoric be used. We cannot have this type of behavior be used and people think that it's okay, or get up and make statements like she did. This is not a battle between good and evil. She lost to another Democrat. She lost to a Democrat who put in work and kept this campaign local. Again, to Dr. Johnson's point, at the end of the day, when you take a district campaign for anything and you try to nationalize it, you end up bringing in a lot of star power from outside of your area. But guess what? Those people don't vote. So you have to make sure that you elevate the issues, you stay on the issues that matter to the people in your district. And she honestly got a lot of Twitter love, and she translated Twitter support into actual voting support, and it came back in better.
Well,
like Andrew Yang did. Go ahead.
And I want to add to that, because this is the thing. I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem with Turner's concession speech. I didn't. It's like, okay, people, they're mad, they're upset, et cetera, et cetera. The issue that I see with this is the inability of people to have an honest conversation about what was happening all along. Nina Turner she's not really heavily aligned with the Democratic Party. That's just the nicest, most honest way to put it. She's been incredibly critical of the party. She was, I think it's We the People, the For the People movement. She was working with a third party right before the last election. It's very difficult to try and turn around and convince people in a Democratic Party that you're down with a party that you have been highly critical of. And what we saw in this race, and again, it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. Because Turner was able to bring in zillions of volunteers from all over, right? They raised awareness of this campaign and the canvassing. I can tell you this from inside both campaigns, because I had conversations with people inside both campaigns. The Turner campaign was estimating maybe 40,000 in turnout. The Brown campaign thought it might be 47,000 in turnout. It's 72,000 people turned out. Neither side knew how excited people were going to get about this. And that's the other thing that happened. I don't think if Nina Turner had not been running in this race, I don't think you get 72,000 people turning out to vote. I think that a lot of that was her bringing so much attention to the race that it woke up the other side. Had she honestly kept it quiet and been focused on local stuff and said, you know what, I love Bernie Sanders, I'll show a video from him, but you know what, this is about Cleveland. I think if she kept it local, she could have won this race. I really think that she kind of shot herself in the foot by making it national.
I don't know how many times we have to remind people, and I like Bernie Sanders a lot, but whether or not folks want to admit it, he didn't resonate with Black voters. I interviewed people who were part of the Bernie campaign after he dropped out, and they went into depth about the mistakes that he made in Mississippi and South Carolina. He just didn't resonate. But before I know you have to go soon, Jason. I do want to ask you about this evil money discussion, right? Because if I have this wrong, correct me, but I believe that Nina Turner raised $4.5 million. She didn't, it's not, when you hear her say that, it almost makes it sound like she was out fundraised and she lost. Now, there is critiques of Shontel Brown working with, what is it, the political action, working with, I forgot which super PAC. But where does this evil, I mean, there is a conversation there about money and politics. Where does this lie in a race like this and future races with I would argue, two progressives?
I think it is extremely dangerous to characterize money as evil. I think it's dangerous. I am not in a position to say how that's interpreted, but I can tell you that there are people locally who saw all sorts of implications with that terminology that I'm sure that Nina Turner did not intend, but that's how people took it. You can't start calling people's money evil and dark and stuff like that. It doesn't win you anything. And it actually offends and annoys people on the outside. Now, I'll say this one quick correction. Nina Turner doubled Brown's fundraising directly.
Right.
But pro-Brown forces spent slightly more money on television. But the truth of the matter is, because of Turner's huge advantage in fundraising, she was on the air in April. I mean, like I said, she had every single advantage in this race. There's no, if you lose by 6 and you have 72,000 people turn out, which is just 3,000 short of a presidential campaign last year, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself. This is fumbling the ball at the 2-yard line. It really, really is. And, but there is a lesson to be learned. And I'll say this in closing. The lesson to be learned is this. It's not that progressives can't win. It's not that the establishment always wins. It's that all campaigns remain local. You got to find some local person that people like, that they remember, that they want to work with, and then run him or her. That's how you got AOC. You can't tell me that progressives can't win. Cori Bush basically just saved millions of people from being evicted this week. Okay. And she was a liberal candidate who ran against an incumbent. It's not about progressives. It's about the candidates that they choose. And I honestly think that had the sort of progressive wing, the progressive establishment, focus more on local issues, they probably could have won this race. But, now Shontel Brown's in office. Obviously, the majority of people liked her. They want to work with her. I think she's a really committed politician. I've had several conversations with her. And hopefully everybody learns from this rather than spending the next 24 hours dunking on either side as the bad guy, because I don't think that helps the country at all.
Agreed. Dr. Jason Johnson, looking forward to your story in the Grio. And of course, we could always see you slaying it on MSNBC as I text you while you're on air. I don't know why I'm doing that, knowing that you're on air. Oh, no.
I'm like, dude, I'm literally setting up the camera. Yeah.
I'm upset by what that person said. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. Appreciate it. Have a good day, man. All right. So let me ask you, Amisha, social media. I have more Twitter followers than Shontel Brown. She has 24,000. Nina Turner has millions. You look at Eric Adams, he had 8,000. Andrew Yang had millions. I've been telling folks for a while, social media is a lie. It doesn't translate to votes. It doesn't translate to even for celebrities. Is it record? Is it album? Is it streams? I don't know. But like music sales, it doesn't translate to movie sales. Having a I know folks who are trying to get published as far as in the publishing industry, and they said, "Oh, well, you don't have 100,000 followers on Twitter," and they would tell the publisher, "Listen, that doesn't translate into book sales. Anybody can buy a bunch of Twitter followers, but what does this say as far as the impact of social media?" I mean, this is a massive difference, a massive difference. What are your thoughts?
Social media can drive advocacy campaigns. Social media can drive, it can help with name recognition. Social media can help with fundraising. What social media has typically not done, and we've seen this in race after race, it's not just this one. We've seen it in races in New York. We've seen it in races in Louisiana. We've seen it in races in Florida. You can say something pithy on social media and get a ton of followers. You can reshare something with a little quirk and get a ton of followers. You can publish something in an article and get a ton of followers. At the end of the day, none of this translates to votes. Local issues matter to local people. Local touches matter to local people. In elections, the question is always, what have you done for me lately? If all you have done is tweet day in and day out, you're going to have a really hard time pulling people out. But beyond that, I think that there has to be a recognition that though it seems like Americans care so much about national politics, the issues that matter to them the most are the ones that are within their own backyard. They care about the potholes in their community. They care about the fact that there isn't a grocery store or that they live in a food desert. They care about the length of time it takes them to get to certain places because of public transit failures or because there isn't any transit available. They care about things that are provided for their children, whether it's after school programs, daycare, things like that. They want you to speak to the issues that matter to the everyday person in said district, in said city, in said area. If you cannot do that, or if you start doing that, then somehow, gear off into another lane at some point, then you're going to lose people. I think that in this case, we saw a candidate who got way too big in the head based on how much traction she was getting on social media, based on how much, attention was being served, what the follower count was, what the retweets were. That does not translate to anything on the ground. Matter of fact, the majority of the people that follow anyone on social media aren't people who would be able to vote from them anyway, because they don't live in the district or area they represent. So I do think that we have to remember that social media is kind of like a funhouse mirror. It is an illusion at best, but it definitely does not help when it comes to gathering votes at all.
And let me say this. I know folks may not like that I'm saying this. How do I frame this the right way? This is complicated. I'm all about people challenging the establishment. I'm definitely about that. But let's be clear, the Black establishment in politics, the Black Democratic establishment in politics is much different than a Joe Biden kind of establishment, right? It's much different. So what I'm getting at is that I'm all about being critical. I'm all about holding folks accountable, but you got to respect your elders sometimes. And I know folks may get upset, but Rep. Clyburn has really done some incredible work, and I didn't agree with everything he's done. He voted for the Crime Reform Bill in 1994, but he's done incredible work, and this is a community that they trust him. So I think there is a dance you have to play to respecting your elders who have paved the way for you. And I'm not talking about a Clarence Thomas elder. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying this because I'm not saying that at all, obviously. But respecting somebody who has paved the way and respectfully disagreeing with them. And I just think, I could be wrong, I'm not in Cleveland, but I saw it in South Carolina during the primaries, that you do just have to, especially, the iconic Black figures in politics, there isn't a lot of them. You know what I'm saying? The ones who've been there for a long time. And I just think there's a dance you got to play. And you got to be careful disrespecting the folks who paved the way for you. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying, Anisha?
I agree with you there. There's respect, obviously, but I think that the bigger portion here is political strategy. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, we know the Congressional Black Caucus, CBC members, especially those who have been there for a while, those who have risen into the ranks of being leaders, those individuals have so much policy under their belt, so much advocacy under their belt. They have seen the waves and throws of presidents of various administrations, some more progressive than others, some staunchly conservative. They've worked in Congress where you couldn't get anything through. They've worked through some of the abuses of power that have existed within the framework that they are forced to work in. And I think that there has to be a historical knowledge of how that process works, but also of just the fortitude of these individuals who have been fighting for the Black community for decades now. Beyond that, there also has to be an understanding that when you isolate these individuals, you also isolate their voters and their support base. When we think about CBC members, with the majority of which being what I would consider elders, these are individuals who also represent a large portion of the Black voting population. They are also elders. The most consistent, persistent voters in this country are elder Black people. So when you're pushing against a lot of the things that they support, when you're pushing against the people that they recognize and throw their support behind, then you're also pushing against them. And I think that what we've seen is that in Nina Turner's race, for instance, she honestly took a page out of what we've seen from some of the top line Twitter progressives. They have been attacking the CBC for a while, AOC included. And I think that at the end of the day, when you're a Black candidate, there are certain things that non-Black candidates can do that Black candidates honestly just cannot do, especially when they're calling on Black voters. And she got a sense of that. She got a taste, a big taste last night, and in terms of that loss, that sizable loss that she received. At the end of the day, being progressive and Black is very different than being progressive and white or being progressive and Latino. At the end of the day, you have the largest composite of the Democratic Party as a Black person running in a race that has a lot of Black voters. And you have to appeal to what those Black voter senses happen to be. And I think that it's not to say that they're not progressive, because as was pointed out earlier, we saw two progressive candidates running in Ohio who had two very different visions, one of which chose to nationalize a race and basically use rhetoric that was a turnoff to Black voters. And the other one decided to lean in on what actually matters to the Black community. Those are two very different stances. In addition to that, we saw a Nina Turner that has gone hell's bells in on trying to destroy the Democratic Party, meanwhile running as a candidate in the Democratic Party. She wasn't running as a third party candidate. And to your point earlier, we can criticize. We should look inwardly and talk about some of the issues the Democratic Party happens to have and push them to be greater, push them to be more knowledgeable and have greater recognition for what needs to change in minority communities and how to bring about that change. But what you cannot do as a candidate is continue to run on a platform that is built on blowing up the Democratic Party, meanwhile trying to seek Democratic support. At the end of the day, either you run as a third party candidate, do what you need to do to get the funding and the support there, or I don't want to say fall in line, but I will say that there is a method of order that we've seen Democratic Party candidates use, be it whether they're progressive Democratic Party candidates or moderate Democratic Party candidates. And she chose to create her own path and her own landscape, and it ended up blowing up in her face. There are very few districts in America that look like AOC's, very few. With that being said, you have to acknowledge that the playbook she used in New York is not a playbook that even other representatives across New York could use. And it's damn sure not one that you can use in Ohio, which is a majority Republican state legislature. And it's continually adding Republicans to its roster every day. So I think that, she made some strategic mistakes, one of which was definitely attacking a standard bearer of the CBC. And honestly, I don't even know why she went there.
It's a good point. I'll give you an example. Rep Jamal Bowman, who I adore, out of New York, much different district. I interviewed him when he was running, and the CBC didn't endorse him. They endorsed Elliot Engel, which if you all know Elliot Engel, look him up. But Rep Bowman didn't have anything bad to say. He even said, "Listen, I don't expect them to endorse me because I'm Black." There was nothing negative to say. And he just kept on pushing on, and it really didn't become a national race until Elliot Engel gets caught on a hot mic saying, "I don't even want to be here," when it came to talking to some constituents. Another example is Ayanna Pressley. I forgot the guy she was challenging. The CBC didn't endorse her. But unless I have it wrong, I don't recall her saying anything negative about the CDC or the power players in the CBC. And now she's a part of the CBC, right? So there is a dance there, but I'll end it here and we'll go to a break. Nonetheless, I do feel like Nina Turner does care. I do feel like she does care and she wants to create significant change. I don't think she's a hack. I don't think she's a liar. I think she sincerely cares and she wants actual change to our communities. And I think Shontel Brown does care as well. But I'm seeing a little bit of heat on Nina Turner that's acting like she just is doing this for her ego. I don't think it's that. I think she really does care. And she may not have won this election, but I hope to see her advocacy continue. Um, Take us out, Tamisha. Close us out.
No, I was going to say, I think part of that heat comes from the fact of how she ran the last few wings of that campaign, but also the fact that she was away for a while. When people don't see you in their district for a long time and you've taken off and done national things and have basically sailed on your own way, it's very hard for you to come back and for you to have that level of trust. We saw the same thing with the former NAACP president who ran for governor in Maryland. At the end of the day, yes, he got a few clicks in Baltimore, but for the most part, everybody else said, where have you been over the past few years? We haven't seen you in Baltimore in over a decade. So I do think a little bit of that comes to play as well.